Driving to school this morning and my daughter says, "Dad, why aren't we allowed to say the word hate in our house?" Long-standing rule we've had, and although we've kind of touched on it a little bit when she's asked, haven't really gone like too far in depth. I said, well, you know, it's kind of complicated, but hate is really hard to come back from. And she said, what's that mean? So honestly, hate is easy. It's simple. It's like, no, it's not. Okay, all right. You're right. Let me kind of explain what I mean. It's not so much hate in and of itself, but it's like what drives hate. Pretty much every researcher ever will tell you that the reason behind why most people hate is usually a lack of education. I'm not talking like the education you get in schools.
I'm talking about the education that we get when we're exposed to all the commonalities and differences that we have as human beings.
So hate is often the result of identity, right? Hate is often the result of who we think we are.
And more importantly, sometimes who we think we're not. Sometimes it's insecurity, sometimes it's fear, sometimes it's a perceived threat.
Also, that hate in and of itself becomes kind of part of your identity, because that hatred sometimes is what drives your belonging as a group or as an ideology, even if the only really shared experience that that group has is the actual experience of hate. It's sometimes, unfortunately, it's like a way to belong. Once that belonging happens in that way, it's really hard to belong in any other way. I turn around and she's like, I have no idea what you just said. Okay, what do you mean? And the first thing she asked was like, well, what does belonging mean? I said, well, you know, it's like fitting in. It's like feeling you have a place. She's kind of silent for a second, and she's like, but I want to fit in. I said, same. And she says, but I don't want to hate. I said, me neither. And then I pulled from the depths of my brain this like CLE that we had to take on psychology a few years back as lawyers. That about half of the same regions in your brain that are activated when we experience hate, the same ones that are activated when we experience love. Difference in how those two things really show up in the world is really just the difference in whether or not we embrace sort of what's different about others, or if we rebuke it. And I had to explain what rebuke means. I said, we don't say hate in our house because that's hard to come back from. It's like writing on a sheet of paper with marker instead of pencil. Both ways are, you know, drawing. They're both coloring. You're gonna have some sort of a piece of artwork with a marker or a pencil. But the difference is, like, once the marker's there, it's hard to change it into something else. With a pencil, you can constantly be adapting and evolving based on like what you learn, a new technique, a new way to draw something. She said, I don't remember the exact phrasing, but she said something like, so you're telling me that I can fit in if I hate or if I love?
Well, yeah, technically.
She said, well, why would anyone choose hate? That doesn't seem fun. I said, okay. You're right. Remember when you first started to play soccer? Just to say how it was so hard, right? The ball would hurt your ankles. Everyone was too fast. The rules were confusing. But you kept working at it, and now you love soccer. It's one of your favorite sports. It changed. She goes, I got good at it. I said, yeah, why? I laughed, and she was like, because I practiced. I said, yeah, now, if I told you that you have a choice, either play soccer every day for the rest of your life, or you can never play soccer again, which would you choose? She says, well, obviously soccer every day. She goes, but I'd probably get tired of it at some point. I was like, yeah, you absolutely will. It's hard to do something every day that requires work. But if you stop doing it, even for a little while, it's going to be a lot harder to get back into it, both because you're not used to it and because sometimes the rules change, the people change. So, you know, at school sometimes, like during recess when they're picking teams, you know how you get really frustrated when you're like the only girl playing and the boys are choosing the teams, and even though you're one of the better players there, you're always picked last. I said, yeah, I hate that. That's actually probably a fair use of the word. I was like, why does that bother you so much? She goes, because I'm really good at soccer. I said, yeah, why do you always get picked last then? She said, because I'm a girl.
I said, that's probably true. Why do you think that the boys are picking you last just because you're a girl? He goes, I don't know, they're probably embarrassed. And I said, why? He goes, maybe they don't want to be the boy that picked the girl. And I said, yeah, probably. But you know what? What usually happens when you're on a team with them? She said, we win.
I said, that's kind of why we don't say the word hate, because at some point, the soccer team that never allows you on is going to identify as a team that just exists for the purpose of not wanting a girl on there. At some point, that's what their identity is going to become, versus the other team, your team, at some point, is going to just try to win the game. It'll be a lot easier to figure out what we want when we're focused on outcomes rather than outgroups.
I didn't say that last part because we were already like 5 minutes late at this point. Get out of the car and she goes, I just want a soccer team where everyone can play soccer. She's 8.